In today's episode, we have breaking news. The former FBI Director James Comey has been indicted. Secondly, Democrats continue to gaslight America over political violence. And the Department of Energy is canceling $13 billion in climate change subsidies. And all these stories will show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
Tonight, we have the breaking news. The former FBI Director James Comey has just been indicted by a federal grand jury, an extraordinary escalation in President Trump's effort to prosecute political enemies. Attorney General Pam Bondi posting on social media just a couple of moments ago here as this news is breaking as we speak. She posted, "No one is above the law. Today's indictment reflects this Department of Justice's commitment to holding those who abuse positions of power accountable for misleading the American people. We will follow the facts in this case." Again, that's from the Attorney General Pam Bondi. And a source tells us now that Comey has been charged specifically with two things, okay, giving false statements, so lying to Congress, and that testimony, you may remember that exchange with Ted Cruz, lying to Congress, and charging him with obstruction of justice. So we understand these are the two charges. I'm saying this as we understand. This is our reporting. We do not yet have the official charging documents in hand, awaiting those any second. But those are the two charges as we understand them.
Okay, so here's what the FBI Director Kash Patel had to say to this announcement. Today, your FBI took another step in its promise of full accountability. For far too long, previous current leadership and their enablers weaponized federal law enforcement, damaging once proud institutions and severely eroding public trust. Bottom line here is he said that nowhere was this politicization of law enforcement more blatant than during the Russiagate hoax, a disgraceful chapter in history we continue to investigate and expose. So we already know what the reaction is going to be, right, from Democrats. They're going to say the president's taking this way too far, he's crossing lines, et cetera, et cetera. But the most important question at this point is, what does the DOJ need to prove to actually convict James Comey? Well, here is one take from News Nation. Take a listen.
John, what does the government have to prove in court in order to win a conviction in this case? Given what we know, all we know is that the charges are lying under oath, obstruction of justice, and lying under oath.
For the lying under oath, they've got to show that Comey knew it was a lie at that time and that he intended to lie, that he knew it was false and that he intended to lie. And so there's going to be tremendous wordsmithing over exactly what was the question and exactly what he said. And his basic answer was that he stood by earlier testimony. So that is a little ambiguous. That's going to give the Comey legal team wiggle room. I think the challenge, again, is going to be the obstruction of justice. If he interfered with an investigation kind of in any way to corruptly interfere with it, then he can be convicted of that. So that's going to be much more the challenge. And as your guests have mentioned, it's kind of ironic. Obstructing of justice is a primary charge that the FBI and DOJ often bring.
Well, it sounds like that is an uphill battle. There is a possibility he could be convicted, but I wouldn't bet my money on it, okay? Now, here's what the president had to say. Justice in America. One of the worst human beings this country has ever been exposed to is James Comey, the former corrupt head of the FBI. Today, he was indicted by a grand jury on 2 felony counts for various illegal and unlawful acts. He's been so bad for our country for so long and is now at the beginning of being held responsible for his crimes against our nation. Make America great again. Now, as I told you guys, it's my perception, based on everything I've heard up to this point, that this is an uphill battle for the DOJ. It's possible, but it's still an uphill battle. And that's why CNN is already saying that this case is probably going to go nowhere. Take a listen.
And now we will get to a trial, right? This is a case that obviously will be some time in the making. We expect that Comey's attorneys will quickly go to the judge and say this is a case of malicious prosecution, because the president of the United States has kind of helped them really write that brief, right? That is something that they are going to be able to make. They're going to go to the court. And look, those motions almost never succeed. They're very difficult to bring. But in this case, the president of the United States has sort of made it a lot easier for them.
Now, how about this question? Did you know that millions of seniors on Medicare are on the wrong plan? And not only that, they're paying more than they really should. And here's the worst part. They believe they have better coverage than they actually do. The question is, why is that? Well, it's because unethical brokers are signing seniors up to the wrong plans. That leaves them in a position where they don't even get the doctors that they want, and they definitely don't even get the prescriptions that they rely on. It's a freaking nightmare. Just imagine needing a procedure that you no longer can delay, but then you get hit with a bill you can't afford. I don't want this to happen to you. This is why I encourage you to call my friends at Chapter today. It's quick, it's easy, and it's free. Their unbiased Medicare advisors in less than 20 minutes will walk you through the best plans that fits your needs. For example, if you already have the right plan, they'll tell you that. And if you don't, they'll help you switch at no cost to you. See, this is why they're known to save seniors thousands of dollars a year on their Medicare expenses. So call Chapter today at 323-431-5200. Again, that number is 323-431-5200. Well, it's interesting how they see it this way, but they didn't see it this way when Alvin Bragg and Letitia James campaigned on the idea of getting President Trump. They said this publicly. They wanted to get elected based on this. They've made their career based on it. So I find it interesting that they didn't call that malicious prosecution, but now they're doing it for James Comey. So there you have it. Now we go to our other story, and this is really continuing to increase. It's the political violence, especially against ICE officers, and Democrats continue to gaslight. But guess what? We have the receipts, and so does Fox News. Take a look.
Well, in case you thought that these ICE attacks or the threats of them were just a one-off, let me show you this. This is pretty incredible. So there's been a surge of them. We had a Molotov cocktail attack near Los Angeles airport. We had this ambush at the Prairie Field Detention Center. You might remember this. It's the Alvarado, Texas event. You had an incendiary device on the 4th of July out in Portland, Oregon. Let's go back down to Texas. There's a shooting at a Border Patrol facility in McAllen. You had protesters firing guns at a raid on a cannabis farm. Remember that? And there was one guy who ended up going to jail. I believe he's indicted on that. And that was in California. You had something also in Washington State, a rock and arson attack at an ICE field office, and then here also San Francisco, pepper spray and ICE agents. So this is more widespread than people think. It's not just a one-off here and there.
Okay, so as you guys just seen there, Fox News is really laying out each event at a time that clearly demonstrates that there is targeted political violence against ICE agents. We're still not talking about political violence against innocent people or people who were at the Charlie Kirk Memorial or politicians, etc., and all the other scenarios in our country where political violence is being used. We're just talking about ICE officers right now, and this continues to prove what we've been saying from the very beginning. The rhetoric that is used starts in a person's mind, and they start thinking about it from that perspective, and then sooner or later they start to act on it for people who emotionally are unwell, okay? That's what's going on here. But don't tell that to Democrats because they're still stuck in the denial phase. Now here is Chris Murphy doing just that.
How important is it for leaders, especially at the very, very top of the government, to set the tone?
Listen, it should not matter whether the radicalization comes from the right or the left or, sort of the non-ideological deep, dark recesses of the internet. This vice president has had a chance now since the assassination of Charlie Kirk to bring the country together to try to stamp out all sorts of violence, including political violence, and they refuse to do that. What they are trying to do is exploit these murders and these shootings in order to silence only dissent and political opposition on the left. No, criticizing the way that ICE is rounding up people in this country in a deeply inhumane and immoral way is not an incitement to violence. There is a moment where you cross the line, but what they are trying to do is to destroy the ability for people who oppose their policies to legitimately engage in political debate, and we are not going to let them do that.
Okay, so according to Chris Murphy, he wants me and you to believe that describing ICE agents as the Gestapo and people who are Nazi and that the president is a Nazi and he's Hitler and that they are terrorizing our neighborhoods and destroying democracy as we know it, they believe that type of rhetoric does not incite violence. Now, for a person who clearly is in control of their faculties, I would agree with that, okay? I still don't agree with someone calling the president that, but that's just my own personal opinion. But for someone where their state of mind is unstable, to them, that sounds like something they need to act upon, meaning taking matters into their own hands, going down to an ICE detention facility and shooting people up. I mean, that's what it sounds like to them. And I don't think Democrats appreciate that at this point. I think they refuse to. Now, here's a former ICE director under Obama pretty much doing the same thing. Take a listen.
This is also an unusual facility, and that serves as a headquarters for the director, the field office director there in Dallas. It also is where, as we just heard, immigrants who are, let's say, under supervised release need to come in and check in. So it has to be open to the public. And while there's an initial perimeter right around the facility, I can tell you that ICE never anticipated you'd have sniper attacks. But what this attack reveals, and what all of this uptick in assaults on ICE officers reveals, really, unfortunately, ICE has become a symbol of the Trump administration. As a result of that, it's a target for violent extremists, and we need to do a quick assessment of what does that mean in terms of officer safety and the safety of the detainees who are in ICE's care and custody.
You heard him. The problem is not people on the left. The problem is that ICE agents have become a symbol of the Trump administration, and that's why they're being attacked. You almost can't make this up at this point. And we have reached a point where none of these sides are willing to give in, okay? If you really think about it, I'm going to show you what the president just said about all this. But we've come to a point where you have people on the left refusing to take any responsibility in the way that they describe what's happening in our country. They don't think there's any consequences to what they say. And of course, the Trump administration and people who support Trump, they definitely don't believe that they are responsible for the violence. And guess what? At least on the side of the Trump administration and people who support him, they're right. There have not been any political violence at least over the past 2 years that you can't even put the name to President Trump and what he has said. Now, speaking of the president, here's what he said.
Who do you hold responsible for the uptick in left-wing violence in the country?
Radical left rhetoric. The radical left is causing the problem. They're out of control. They're saying things, and they're really dumb people. I mean, I look at Crockett. I look at some of these people. They're very low IQ people, actually. But the radical left is causing this problem. Not the right, the radical left. And it's going to get worse, and ultimately it's going to go back on them. I mean, bad things happen when they play these games. And I'll give you a little clue. The right is a lot tougher than the left. But the right's not doing this. They're not doing it. And they better not get them energized, because it won't be good for the left. And I don't want to see that happen either. I'm the president of all the people. But the radical left is causing this. Radical left Democrats are causing this problem. And it gets worse. It gets worse. And it'll be a point where other people won't take it anymore. And that will not be good for the radical left. And we don't want that.
Yeah, so that is the president really giving a stark warning to the people who are responsible for the increase in political violence, especially this year. And some of it I actually agree with, because at the end of the day, these people need to be stopped and held accountable. Now, I don't believe violence is the solution, so I would hope that people don't respond in that way, of course. But we have to get this figured out. Something has to slow this down, and hopefully that happens because the Department of Justice ends up doing their job, of course. Now, this actually takes us to the photo here that you guys see here on the screen that proves the point of what the president was saying about rhetoric and how it leads to political violence. What do those words say to you? Hey, fascist, catch. That sounds familiar, right? That was engraved on the bullet casings that was used to assassinate Charlie Kirk. Well, this is at a university called Georgetown. This is insane. Take a listen.
Capital Georgetown is the oldest Catholic university in the U.S., founded in 1789, 1 year after the Constitution was ratified. And now one student says he was appalled and shocked at seeing those posters on the leafy campus.
I read this immediately as a threat, not only for me, but for everyone on this campus, every conservative, everyone who just does not subscribe to the prevailing leftist orthodoxy. This is a direct threat against them. It means that there are students at this campus who would want to see conservatives dead rather than engaging with their ideas, rather than facilitating a political discourse.
Shay McGinnis said he immediately thought of Charlie Kirk's assassination when he saw these posters from the John Brown Gun Club, which many describe as a leftist gun club. The poster used the same language inscribed on the shell casings used by Charlie Kirk's assassin. In the statement, the school said, quote, Georgetown University has no tolerance for calls for violence or threats to the university. The flyers have been removed, and the university is investigating this incident and working to ensure the safety of our community. Education Secretary Linda McMahon calling the posters appalling, writing in part, "At a moment like this, Georgetown has to determine what it stands for as an institution. Allowing violent rhetoric to fester on our nation's campuses without consequences is dangerous."
Now, some reports are saying that this organization is not an official student organization on this university, so we'll see about that. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think what's on that flyer tells you the full story here, that people are not only encouraging this rhetoric continuously on these college campuses, but they have no problem writing those words and using it to promote their club. I think that is just crazy to me. But we'll see if Georgetown releases a statement, because we know they are a far left university. There's no question about it, and I can show you plenty of clips to prove that to be a fact. Now, let's go to our next story. This is a huge update regarding the Dallas shooter who yesterday shot up the ICE detention facility, killing one migrant, by the way, in the process. And this is the U.S. attorney, or acting U.S. attorney for North Texas, Nancy Larson. The bottom line is she gets to what was labeled on the shell casings and what they mean to the authorities. Take a listen.
I want to point out that one of these notes or papers, the sniper explicitly states, "Yes, it was just me." That statement appears to be correct at this point in the investigation. Notably, these loose notes included a game plan of the attack and target areas at the facility. He called the ICE employees people showing up to collect a dirty paycheck. He wrote that he intended to maximize lethality against ICE personnel and to maximize property damage at the facility. He hoped to minimize any collateral damage or injury to the detainees and any other innocent people. It seems that he did not intend to kill the detainees or harm them. It's clear from these notes that he was targeting ICE agents and ICE personnel. The tragic irony for his evil plot here is that it was a detainee who was killed and two other detainees that were injured when he fired into the Sally Port.
So authorities are just confirming what we already know. There was a deranged individual looking to do damage, was not able to do as much damage as he had planned to, by the way. And in the process of him targeting ICE officers, he killed one of these migrants. That's just the bottom line to it. And what motivated him? I don't know. Political language that led him to believe that he needed to do this to stop what's happening with ICE agents deporting illegal aliens? Maybe something of that nature? Now, if you were to ask the congresswoman of this district by the name of Jasmine Crockett, here is her take about what happened and who's really at fault. Take a listen.
That were the victims. The fact that we have someone who was entrusted with the care of these migrants, regardless of their status, she was entrusted with their care. And the fact that she cannot acknowledge that while these people were entrusted to her care, they ended up dying. That is a problem. The first thing that should have come out of her mouth, the first thing that should have come out of anyone's mouth that was engaged with this investigation is who died. Instead, a lot of people were sitting around believing potentially that officers had been harmed, that officers had been killed. And then the next thing you know, they're saying, yes, this guy was targeting officers, and he may or may not have been. We just want full transparency. But at the end of the day, we know that based on the information we've been given, that this assailant then decided that he was going to take his own life.
All right, number one, I think you can see why the president does not hold back when he calls Jasmine Crockett low IQ. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that find that comment from the president, I don't know what the word would probably be, disturbing, okay? But when you hear her speak about what's happening, there's not a lot of intelligence in there. I'll give you an example. In the beginning, she claims that we don't know if he was targeting ICE officers or not. And then she ends up saying all he wanted to do was target ICE officers. And in the process, one of these migrants got hurt. And then she goes on to blame Kristi Noem and the people in charge for not talking about the victims in this situation, which was the migrant who was killed. I'm not understanding the point that she's trying to make. Maybe you guys do. Please put in the comment section if you're able to figure out what she was trying to say. But we do know how the president feels, and here he is later on today, just moments ago in the Oval Office, saying this because he had to respond to that clip. Take a listen.
Crockett recently.
Jasmine Crockett. Remember what I said? Is she a relation to the late, great Davy Crockett? I don't think so. Jasmine Crockett, let me tell you, before you even ask, she's a very low IQ person. I mean, if we ever had to pass an aptitude test, that's the one should take one because she shouldn't even be in the crowd. So I have no idea what you're going to, but I don't think we should waste our time. This is a low IQ person who I can't even believe is a congressperson. Between her and Ilhan Omar and the group. You know, I met the head of Somalia. Did you know that? And I suggested that maybe he'd like to take her back, and he didn't want her. He said, I don't want her.
Calling Jasmine Crockett low IQ, there's so many other things you could probably call her instead, right? I think that's a fair statement to make. I mean, let's just call her incompetent, a political puppet. You know, she hasn't accomplished anything for her district. In fact, she never even talks about her district, right? She's doing the whole Gavin Newsom thing where they do everything but actually focus on who they're responsible for. I think those are fair criticisms. But what happens in all of this political rhetoric is the true victims in all of this. So while Jasmine Crockett is crying about what happened in Dallas, and not because this person was deranged or that, but criticizing the authorities for basically doing their job, I suppose, she's not focusing on the everyday Americans who have been negatively impacted by illegal immigration. Listen to this heartbreaking story. It comes from Fox News, and it serves as a careful reminder on why the president is so hell-bent on getting illegal aliens out of our country. Take a listen.
A California father now demanding answers from Governor Gavin Newsom. This after ICE arrests an illegal immigrant who allegedly caused a multi-car pileup while driving an 18-wheeler. That crash last year severely injured 6-year-old Delilah Coleman, leaving her with critical and life-altering injuries. And her parents join us now, Marcus Coleman and Ileana Kraus. Thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry for what you and Delilah are going through. Marcus, could you start us here and just explain what happened and how your little girl has suffered after this?
Good morning. Yeah, she was involved in a vehicle accident last year on June 20th. And she was on her way to Victorville. We had a heat wave here in Bakersfield, 112 degrees that weekend. So she went up there to go swimming. And there was construction on the highway that she was on. They were at a dead stop. Multiple vehicles were sitting there waiting. And what they did was they closed off one lane to open up another lane and let traffic travel through one lane at a time. And the semi-truck failed to stop, smacked her vehicle first, as well as went through 4 other vehicles before coming to a complete stop. And my daughter was airlifted from Adelanto area, the Highway 395, all the way to Loma Linda Children's Hospital, where she stayed there for about a month and a half, and she was in a coma for about 3 of those weeks.
Now, I want to go a step further and provide you guys with a resource. This is an account on X called Illegal Alien Crimes. Now, why should you care about this? Well, it's because if you ever are questioning your belief in all of this, just go to this account. They track all illegal aliens who have committed crimes and have been arrested. Okay? It's that simple. And they tell you who they are, where they were located or where they were arrested, what they were arrested for, etc. And they do it every 2 weeks where they do a total roundup of everybody they've been able to track, including the photos. And just look at this one, an hour ago. This guy was, obviously he's a legal alien, but he was arrested for doing what? Driving a commercial motor vehicle without applicable endorsements, meaning he is not qualified to do so. And just like you heard in that last heartbreaking story, this is the part that Democrats, where they just lose all credibility. They refuse to acknowledge the American citizens who have been negatively impacted by crimes committed by illegal aliens. It's a privilege to be in this country. And so we shouldn't take that lightly. And I just wish that Democrats would own up to it already. And that actually takes us to another story that Democrats should own up to, and that's this whole climate change nonsense that has wasted tax-paying dollars. Now, the Department of Energy has announced the cancellation of $13 billion of funding And so we'll hear what they have to say about why they're doing this, and then I'm going to give you guys some good information about this entire situation. Take a listen.
Well, the Energy Department setting its sights on $13 billion in subsidies that were earmarked under the Biden administration to help fight climate change. This comes after President Trump's address to the United Nations dismissing climate change as a, quote, con job. Energy Secretary Chris Wright joins us now. Mr. Secretary, thank you for taking the time. I wanted to start off by playing what the president said at the UN the other day. Listen here.
This climate change, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune.
And as you can imagine, as you know, that drew a sharp response from some Democrats, including Hillary Clinton, who said this.
You know, yesterday at the UN, President Trump said, climate change is a hoax, because it's just total disinformation. It's a statement that is just not true, and yet being propagated.
Number one, $13 billion that has been earmarked for climate change subsidies is already a problem. Why is that? Because we know the government, including at the state level, does not know how to budget the money properly. That's why every time we ask the question, what happened to the money, they can't tell us. And as a result, it hurts really two things, which brings me to point number two, is that it hurts the solar and wind industry because now they get a bad rap because it's poor execution from our political leaders. And then point number three, it hurts the overall consumer. Now, as someone who used to live in California, I'm very versed into solar and electricity prices, and I'll get to that here shortly. But first, let's hear from the governor of California and what he believes is the reason why solar, and particularly Tesla, was successful. Take a listen.
Well, I think the thing that we've dominated in is the electricity architecture, and we've dominated in clean cars. I signed the first executive order in the United States to require alternative fuel vehicles by 2035. That was just taken away by Congress, the supine Congress and the president. But we created the market. There is no Elon Musk, there's no Tesla without California's regulatory framework, period, full stop. It wouldn't exist. It was because of the regulations.
Now, obviously, the only reason why Tesla is successful, actually, there's two reasons. Number one, that they did get a subsidy from the federal government in the form of a loan, and they had to pay that back, and they did. And number two, it's recorded history that Elon Musk slept in the factory for over a year to fix the problems while they were on the verge of bankruptcy. So I don't think it has anything to do with Gavin Newsom, but we'll let him say what he wants to say because that's what he does. Instead, we'll just focus on the facts. And the fact is that $2.2 billion solar plant that was in California is scheduled to finally be turned off. I'm telling you guys, the solar stuff, it's not solar that is the problem, because solar does work, by the way. There's a reason why China is all in on it. It's that our political leaders look at solar as a way to make more money for themselves. It's a corrupt business. Let me give you an example. So in California, the electricity prices has continued to skyrocket, even though solar is available. Now, why is that? Because in California, the electricity companies, they're monopolies, and they're in business with the governor. So is it solar that is the problem? Is it renewable energy that is the problem? Or is it people like Gavin Newsom that is the problem? And when you see this story about the solar plant being shut down, it's just poor execution. All right, now let's hear more on this subsidies being canceled by the Department of Energy, or their attempt to. Take a listen.
The Department of Energy is working to advance its critical mission of unleashing affordable, reliable, and secure energy for all Americans while increasing efficiency and promoting better stewardship of taxpayer dollars. The release did not say specifically what those funds, that $13 billion, had been earmarked to fund. Can you shine some more light on that for us?
So these $13 billion were actually never allocated to anything. They allocated hundreds of billions of dollars to green energy projects and make cars electric. These things Americans don't want to buy, higher prices Americans don't want to tolerate. These $13 billion were still never allocated. So no point in doubling down on investing in things that have worked out so poorly for the American people. That's over $100 per American family in savings. And if you look at the total Biden expenditures on this Green New scam, it's thousands of dollars for every American family. And guess what? We got 82% of our energy from hydrocarbons when Biden got inaugurated, and 82% of our energy from hydrocarbons when President Trump got inaugurated. That's why President Trump got elected, to just stop this nonsense, start focusing on people and not a climate cult.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I just add on to this, in case for some of you people in the back who may not like solar, or you think renewable energy is a waste of money. Okay, so I'll give you an example. When we used to live in California, my electricity bill, without solar, by the way, the most I ever had to pay in 1 month was $1,600. You heard me correctly. That's how bad it is in California, because I told you the electricity companies, it's corrupt, okay? The Governor Gavin Newsom just lets them get away with murder, essentially. And so when we switched over to solar, you know how much my electricity bill was then? $300. Huge difference. But the problem here is not solar, okay? The problem is the rhetoric with climate change that has, under Biden, of course, caused all this money to go out the window, taxpayer money, to fund projects and programs that do not lead to actual results for the taxpayer. That's the problem. And so that's what the president is focused on, and their strategy is just to shut it all down. Okay, now, I don't necessarily agree with shutting down programs that can help communities be funded by solar, meaning an apartment complex or a neighborhood, a subdivision. I mean, those are smart plays, by the way, especially if you're dealing with an electricity company that is a monopoly and they could just raise the rates whenever they want. So that makes sense to me there. But all this other nonsense, and again, we can't even tell you what the climate program is because they just make it up, just like USAID. So I'm with the president on this one. Now, let's hear from you guys in the comment section to these stories today that we talked about in this video, starting with what happened in Dallas yesterday and Jasmine Crockett's response, okay? Now, you may not agree with the president that she's low IQ, so I'll do you one better. Why don't you tell me in the comments section how you would describe her, okay? If you were the president, what would you say about her based on what she had to say about the shooting yesterday? Let me know what you guys think about that. And then secondly, how the left, especially mainstream media, they're pretty much trying to blame the Trump administration for this shooting, for what's happening to ICE officers, and they don't think political rhetoric has anything to do with it. And for the people who do understand solar and have experienced it, what do you make of what I had to say? Just give me all your thoughts in the comments section below. Now, in our next video, it was reported yesterday that James Comey and Letitia James are on the verge of being indicted by the DOJ. But let's be real. Is that really going to happen or not? Well, that's what we discuss in this video. So if you guys want to check it out, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.